Did the Seattle Mariners organization just give its fans the middle finger? That's coming up next here on this episode of Believe in Mariners. Jerry Dipoto is here to stay. That is the news we all saw on a Thursday night. Kind of seemed like a little bit of a late Thursday night tasty lick of news coming from Ryan Divish and Adam Jude from the Seattle Times. And it's got me all in knots for this episode of Believe in Mariners. What's up, sports fans? Schultz, Jordon Schultz, a Pacific Northwest talk show host from Portland, Oregon, sitting in with you talking about, well, I was planning on talking about, the Mariners going into a series against the Cardinals. 3 games in St. Louis, finishing up a 10-game road trip, actually still have a breath of a chance at the playoffs. 4.5 games out behind the Houston Astros in the AL West as I tape this on Friday morning, September 6th. And, thinking, maybe, the tease is there. That slight bit of hope is there. I saw Softy from KJR up in Seattle tweeting, like, the Mariners just keeping me there. I'm so sick. Like, I'm so attached to this team still, even when they've got just a tiny chance. And I'm with him. I'm like that as well. And anybody else out there, welcome. This podcast here, Believe in Mariners. You can identify with me, and we can celebrate our sickness together. But the crazy news that we saw dropping Thursday night is what I've got to talk about basically this whole podcast, and that is Jerry Dipoto here to stay. Jerry Dipoto is going to be the Mariners president in 2025 and beyond, according to Ryan Divish and Adam Jude from the Seattle Times. The headline says Jerry Dipoto expected to return as Mariners president in 2025, sources say. And this wasn't really done as an announcement. It was done through breaking news from Ryan Divish and through Adam Jude coming through sources from the Mariners organization to the Seattle Times. According to the article, going really further into this, even before Scott Service had been fired himself with 34 games remaining in the regular season, ownership had basically already decided, kind of in midsummer or so, to proceed for a 10th season, kind of going ahead with Jerry Dipoto as the head of the club's baseball operations at that point. And I gotta just give you some raw reaction. I mean, it pisses me off as a diehard Mariners fan, but it also really does kind of make me realize exactly what my organization is. What the team that I root for is. I guess the teal colored glasses a little bit off my heart now. Like it's kind of a sore spot. Like to realize that the removal from the real world for y'all, the entertainment that you find, and a lot of you listening, I'm assuming, is Seattle Mariners baseball. Like for me, T-Mobile Park is my sanctuary, right? When I need, to relax, when I need to just chill out, have a couple of cheap beers, because thank God they've got the 450 Miller High Lifes all around T-Mobile Park. Really appreciate those. Cheers, living the high life. But it's just somewhere that I if I'm needing a break or just want a fun time, it's a 3-hour drive for me, but I gotta go. And I've already been a handful of times this season, plan on going next week. And it's just so frustrating that like this utopia for me, this removal from real life for me and other fans, just kind of seems like the balloon of all that is being popped, hearing that Jerry Dipoto, after making so many terrible moves in the last 2 off seasons. And I mean, we can get into like his pitching skills, and yes, he is able to, that there are positives here. It's like, why would John Stanton want to keep him? We can get into that, and ownership really looking at probably the positives that Jerry Dipoto has offered to this organization, which he has brought positives. I'm not just going to sit here, for 20, 30 minutes and bitch the entire time and say, hey, you know what? Jerry Dipoto's done nothing good, and that's why he needs to go out the door. Absolutely not. That's an ass point. But there are things that he has not been able to do repeatedly. And when you go out and have 2 off seasons in a row, regardless if ownership is limiting you or not, I get it. And that's a whole other problem. We can do a whole other episode or two on Believe in Mariners on how ownership, does hamstring Jerry Dipoto. It's true. Doesn't really allow him to spend the money that he needs to. However, doesn't that just mean that Jerry Dipoto is forced to kind of be better at his job, scouting, really good hitters for less cost or trying to find not necessarily a diamond in the rough, because that kind of seems to be how Jerry Dipoto operates. Like, for this guy from 2 or 3 years ago that nobody cares about anymore, I'm going to bring him in and we're going to realign his swing. We're going to reimagine his approach at the plate. And it never works. But, maybe targeting someone a little bit better, somebody more known that you'd have to give up another prospect for, which that is definitely outside of the middle of this season at the trade deadline. It seems like that's something that Jerry Dipoto has been unwilling to do, but it just tells me that Jerry Dipoto isn't really good at finding hitters. So why does Jerry Dipoto deserve to come back for a 10th season after bringing us the likes of Nori Aoki, bringing us the likes of Malik Smith through trades, going to free agency and signing Mitch Garver for basically what I believe that is his only free agent hitter multi-year deal that he has ever signed in his tenure as 9-10-year GM president of the Seattle Mariners. So it's obvious what his approach is. He likes to go for those cheaper guys, as we were just talking about, man. Ty France, getting him in that Andres Munoz trade, as a bonus, for Austin Nola and Dan Altavilla, going down to San Diego, like that's exactly what Jerry Dipoto wants. He identifies something in an organization that's undervalued. They come in and they produce for the Mariners. And you know what? Ty France, to Jerry Dipoto's credit, was a bit of a success story for a while. Made an all-star team and hitting for the Cincinnati Reds right now. It's not like he's a terrible player. He does have a swing, and he really can make consistent contact with the ball when he's actually on. It's just when the organizational philosophy is so flawed, it kind of makes you wonder. You see guys like Ty France leaving and having more success. It makes you wonder, why does Jerry Dipoto deserve to come back for a 10th season when the names of Tommy La Stella are ringing in my head, when AJ Pollock is ringing in my head, when Colton Wong is still ringing in my head? And it's kind of bush league that the Mariners organization does not want to answer that question in a public forum. And if you go on to read this article in the Seattle Times, near the end, it does say that basically the Seattle Mariners organizational policy has always been not to really talk publicly, about the amounts that their executives and their managers and coaches are making in their organization, but B, really talk about like the length of extensions, or as you've seen in the past, as Ryan Divish writes, they actually don't always reveal when they sign their executives to extensions. Jack Zarenzik, apparently under the cover of night in 2013, was able to get a kind of secret extension from Howard Lincoln and Chuck Armstrong in the final year of his deal. Fans are thinking, well, is he a lame duck GM? But Jack Zarenzik knows, no, he's not. And really just kind of pointing to the Mariners operating in a mysterious way, and a reason that I believe they need to answer the question, why? Why does Jerry Dipoto need to come back for a 10th season in the public forum? They need to address the faith that they are putting in the man that has continually failed at developing an offensive culture and bringing any meaningful hitters via free agency. I mean, why? After the second season of a lineup lacking a full-time hitter, even after you acquire Randy Arozarena at the trade deadline, why after the second season of a lineup with holes in the 1 through 9 does Jerry Dipoto deserve to come back? We, as fans, the media, the city of Seattle, deserves an answer from owner John Stanton on this. We deserve one. Why does a man who's continually touted prospects deserve to make fans wait through another possible rebuild or a wave of like Colt Emerson and Luzardo Montas and Ty Pete and whoever the hell else is coming up? Why are we supposed to be okay with that philosophy as fans? Why are we forced into waiting for that? Why does the man who asked us that he was doing us a favor by asking us to wait and to kind of just sit back and let the team win a baseline of 54% of games, because if they do win that baseline, then they're going to be in the World Series, and then go on and trade Jared Kelenic and Gino Suarez to try to just explain that? Why does the man that has done all that deserve to come back for a 10th season? I mean, it's pretty obvious. We've already talked about why he should be fired. I don't really need to go into that. I kind of just went into a little bit of it in my rant. You go back into the last episode of Believe in Mariners, I go over pretty extensively why I think Jerry Dipoto needs to move on. But if you want to just kind of simplify it, he doesn't know how to build a lineup 1 through 9. He treats players and coaches like crap. The Seattle Mariners, essentially under Jerry Dipoto, are like a captain's worst nightmare. They're like a ship with no direction, no destination. Jerry Dipoto changes the philosophy, sees a hitting philosophy he likes for a couple of years. Oh, it starts to fade. Well, let's come up with a new one. Let's eliminate some guys with strikeouts and then try to go get some new guys that I think are going to do something. And guess what? Those guys that are striking out, and Gino Suarez and Teoscar Hernandez, are still producing. And Jerry Dipoto has looked like an ass. So kind of brings me around to all of this being obvious to me. I would assume it's obvious to you as Mariners fans. I genuinely think that people that think Jerry Dipoto should be keeping his job at this point are like Mariners simps. I'm sorry to say it, but does this move feel like a middle finger to the fans by the Mariners organization? Is this just like a big old double bird to all you Mariners fans and I? Or is this like a legitimate decision based on analysis, thoughtful consideration, maybe? Which one is it? My gut tells me that it's just a middle finger. Obviously just guessing, but I'm not sure. It's Bush League the way that they've handled it. It's Bush League that this wasn't announced. Seattle basically hiding from their fans. So that's one reason why this kind of feels like a middle finger right now, not coming out publicly and addressing anything. They know because they're hiding from fans right now, because Jerry Dipoto was on that Zoom call, they're not really out answering questions. John Stanton's not really out, putting himself out there, taking the hits for this bad decision. So as fans, that they're hiding from y'all. And because of that, you can deduce that Mariners ownership knows that this isn't good enough, yet they hope Mariners simps will keep buying tickets no matter what. I am so sick of buying what this organization is selling. And I guess you do have to try to answer the question as to why John Stanton and the rest of ownership would want him back. And I did say earlier in this episode of Believe in Mariners, he has that there are definitely some positives to lean on, right, for Jerry Dipoto's time here. And it's definitely a different position that the Mariners organization is in as compared to when he showed up. Jack Cerenzik left the cupboard bare, and he was a terrible general manager at developing any kind of talent. Jerry Dipoto hasn't been great at developing hitters, but you've seen what pitchers have done here coming out of Seattle. You've seen what the bullpen's like, and that's been a Scott Service, Jerry Dipoto philosophy that the organization has been, pretty successful with for quite a long time. And there are, young prospects waiting in the wings right now, all those gaggle of guys, and they are just prospects, that they are nothing at this point, but that's how Jerry Dipoto operates. He is like an asset stacker. He wants to keep all these young assets, and to him, it's richer in his office with all of these young prospects like files sitting there that he's got in his organization than sitting at looking at like 6 World Series trophies. He would rather have that pile of files on his desk, or whatever the hell they use to evaluate players right now. Basically would rather have those guys in his organization than those World Series trophies. That's obviously what is more valuable to Dipoto. But you really ask why John Stanton and the rest of ownership would want him back beyond the positives that he has done for the organization. I've got 2 theories. It's either one, that ownership legitimately believes that, these positives that Dipoto has put in place with the plan over the last decade, within the restraints of certain operating costs that ownership have put Jerry Dipoto under. And really, the only way that the team can operate at that cost successfully, at least that John Stanton and Chris Larson have seen, has been has been Jerry Dipoto's way. And Jerry Dipoto's way of mining for prospects in their minds could be the best way to continue the Seattle Mariners status quo, which is giving fans some hope, kind of teasing them just enough to make a profit. I fall into that as well. It sucks. I don't think I'm a full-on Mariners simp because I'm not defending Jerry Dipoto and I wasn't defending Scott Service. Anybody defending Jerry Dipoto at this point is a simp, and you really need to re-examine like how you evaluate a team. But this organization continues to give fans just enough hope to make a profit while not meaningfully improving the team via free agency under kind of the operating status quo from ownership, John Stanton and Chris Larson and everybody else. So that's my first theory there, that they legitimately believe that this is the best way forward for their organization under the leadership of Jerry Dipoto, and the way that they want to operate is really best worked through Jerry Dipoto. Or two, they don't believe in Jerry at all, but ownership really has no more plans to spend any more money, right? So what's the use in bringing someone in if Jerry Dipoto has already done exactly what you're going to do the last two off seasons coming up this off season? If you're going to go forward with the exact same approach, why would you bring somebody else in to execute that? So those are my two theories. I don't really like either of them. It makes me sick to my stomach. Like I said earlier, like the teal glasses ripped off of my heart here. My favorite team, my Seattle Mariners, your Seattle Mariners, do not care about winning a World Series. They don't care about playoff appearances. They don't care about wins at the major league level. They don't care about the city of Seattle or anyone else that roots for the team, really. They care more about profits. They care more about perceptions. They care more about fireworks nights, about bobblehead promotions. Hey, only for the first 20,000 fans, though. But worst of all, they just care more about themselves. It's basically these guys counting money hand over fist, excited to run, a shiny toy, a Major League Baseball operation at a profit, rather than actually understand and respect the organization and the toy, whatever you want to call it, that they own, and actually do something with it. Respect the game of baseball. Respect these players that are coming in and working so hard. And Jerry Dipoto is just not good at that. But John Stanton doesn't care. I mean, what is the invisible wall that the Mariners are being pressed up against that prevents them from spending any more money? You hear like, oh, well, the Mariners, they're up against their ceiling. That's because John Stanton is saying that. It's not invisible. It's a rich and cheap owner. John Stanton or Chris Larson or whoever you want to put in. None of the minority owners are speaking up and saying, hey, we should be spending more money either. It's like, I'll quote John Taffer from Bar Rescue. It's like, and this just sucks that this is the way that my favorite organization works, but this Seattle Mariners organization is one that is focusing on the pennies and not the dollars. They care more about the perception of how a move looks, as opposed to, whether or not a player is actually successful on the field or not. They just want to look good. It's the reason why I think that Jerry Dipoto kind of forced Dan Wilson to call up Luis Urias in the last month of the season. It's because Dipoto essentially knows now, when we have kind of hindsight 2020 glasses, Dipoto knows that he's got his job going forward. And he has the directive to say, hey, these are my guys. And I'm going to show my guys, Luis Urias, Mitch Garver, those of the likes, that I'm going to believe in them. And I'm going to look good when they finally come through. And guess what, Jerry? They're never going to come through. And I know that John Stanton, isn't necessarily like a baseball evaluator. He's not like a guy that is like an expert at hiring baseball executives or bringing in players or anything like that. But I would hope that he's starting to see the fallacy in this plan of Jerry Dipoto, but I don't think so. I just think that it's basically one of the two theories that I have, that they either just don't care and they are going forward with the same approach regardless. So why change the guy that's been doing it the last two seasons, or they legitimately believe in Jerry Dipoto? And frankly, both scare me. And it doesn't make me just want to straight up like boycott the Seattle Mariners. It makes me pretty close. But you really do. You start to see the people on Twitter saying like, well, what's the way to change this? And I would think a lot less season ticket renewals, because that's that's kind of some, roving or revolving income, I guess you should say, that like they kind of expect at a yearly clip on the regular. And if that's changing, that's going to be a big deal to them. But it's crazy. Do you really think that this organization, who already said they're going to spend less because of the Root Sports deal, is going to spend more because they're not making money on season ticket holders? Like, it's ass backwards. And I'm not saying for that reason that season ticket holders should go out and buy, more season tickets or like add 2 seats to their package just to give the Mariners more money so they'll go and spend it, because they're not going to. It's just this organization's philosophy is flawed. Simply put, the Seattle Mariners just don't want to win a World Series. They want to make a profit. I hate that I am finally understanding this 110% now. I hope going forward, they can just kind of, get lucky with a shot in the dark and make the playoffs and make the World Series, because that's essentially at this point the only way that I'm going to see Seattle there, right? It's not going to be because of calculated moves and because of a great plan. It's because of luck. And the way that this organization operates just sucks. It's got me in my feels, but Jerry Dipoto, he is going to be with the Seattle Mariners as the president for 2025 and beyond, according to sources telling Adam Jude and Ryan Divish for the Seattle Times. All right, that's pretty much going to wrap it up on Believe in Mariners. Thank you all so much for listening. The Mariners do have that 3-game set in St. Louis. Brad Miller and Eric Fetty on the bump for Friday evening's 5:15 first pitch. And excited to see, you know what, like I said, the Mariners kind of giving us a tease, kind of giving us a little bit of hope. Excited to see if they can get some more movement on the Houston Astros. Just 4.5 games back as I tape this in the AL West, but 21 games remaining. So as Jack Bauer says in 24, we're running out of time. But thanks again once you all for listening. Hey, if you're a former Mariners player out there that happens to find this podcast, or you're listening and you know a former Mariners player that wants a media opportunity, please hit me up on Twitter on the air, Jordan with an O, or direct them to Believe. Get in touch with either of us. We'll get in touch with you and we'll make it happen. I would love to bring a former MLB player, but specifically a Mariners player on. If you wore a Mariners uniform for one game, you qualify. I would love to have you on this show as a regular co-host to kind of have just not only I mean, I've been watching the game for, 25 years, but I've never played. Not only my like fan knowledge, but actual knowledge from a player standpoint. So really excited to add that aspect to the show here once we can find a former player. But make sure, help the show grow, and I'm sure we'll find a former player faster. If you give the podcast, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you get your podcast, a 5-star rating and review. Those algorithms love it when you type a review as well as put a 5-star rating in there. Really appreciate it. Or if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like the video. Really appreciate you. It's the best way that you can support Believe in Mariners. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay safe and keep those tridents up, Mariners fans. See you soon.